And joining us from Toronto is host of the Brandon Gonez Show, our very good friend, Mr. Brandon Gonez himself. Hello.
Hey, Jess. Hey, Cyn. So happy to be with you guys. Miss you guys.
Oh, we miss you. And coming to us from Kawartha Lakes is multidisciplinary performer, actor, and model, Ivory. Ivory, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
We're going to start with something that I'm pretty sure is top of mind, not just for the four of us, but for our viewers. And it's social media. With so much social media at our disposal these days, it's easier and faster than ever to follow the war in Ukraine. Is that good or bad? I don't know. We're going to get into it. Brandon, what are your thoughts on this?
I think this is going to be so interesting because this is kind of like the first time we're delving into, what could potentially be a world war, but we have social media at our disposal. And what I keep thinking about this is that, social media is a tool that allows things to go viral. And typically, when we've been in war-like situations, the images that we're seeing, the videos that we're seeing from these places, they're usually filtered through mainstream lens, right? They're dissected and they're filtered through and then given out to and dispersed across the world. But now people who are in these situations, in these places like Ukraine, for example, they can literally put out there the images that are actually taking place. If a bomb falls on the ground, they can put that out there. That can go viral. And I look at this and I think, how is this going to impact the politics of this all, right? Because everybody's been saying, oh, the Western leaders are not moving fast enough. Yes, there are sanctions, but they're not moving fast enough to put Putin to a halt. But I think if people are seeing these images right away, as soon as you finish watching the social, you go on your phone, you see these images, there might be more political pressure on these leaders to, hey, you guys got to do something. You got to do something fast, and you got to do something now.
Ivory, what's on your mind with all of this?
I think it's a tricky situation because it's weird to be in a world where everything is happening to the moment online. But I wonder, why are we all mobilizing so quickly right now with Ukraine, like we should? But where was this kind of solidarity and where was this kind of media reception and social media reception when we had countries that weren't predominantly white in very similar situations? Like, where are these, Facebook profile filters for Palestine? Where is this kind of mobilization and this global attention when everything was happening in Yemen, right? And my heart is breaking for the Ukrainian people right now, and it's horrific to watch this in real time. But you also have to sort of check your implicit biases and the biases of Western culture, where we're all of a sudden on high alert because it's Ukraine, but there's countries who've been bombed and invaded for years, and we've given them none of this solidarity.
Yeah, that's
you are 100% right.
Necessary to point out. Thanks for pointing it out, Ivory. Going back to what Brandon said, I totally agree with the speed at which this stuff is coming out. But what do you guys think about also the risk of misinformation coming out at the same speed? Because we saw that recently here in Canada with the convoy situation. I'm curious to know about that.
Yeah, armchair activism
is doing that.
Sorry.
No, you go, Ivory. Go ahead.
Armchair activism is frustrating because I think that now that we've all been given this way to weigh in and to communicate live and as it happens, we want to get our 2 cents in. And when something is shared that seems critical and important, we want to spread it far and wide. But people rarely fact check, and they don't recognize that a simple post and click can lead to a snowball effect that can have incredible fallout. And that's my main concern with the way that we're able to sort of weigh in these days.
I do think also the impulse to help obviously is, everywhere right now. And there are a bunch of, I'm hearing, like fake accounts, money can be misdirected. So I think people have to really do their due diligence, not just in information, but also when they're trying to reach out. I mean, Ivory, you raised a really interesting point. It's something I've been struggling with because I, like so many people, have been looking at the images in particular of families and mothers with children. The subway images come to mind. I've seen also the border images of just, these families together. And it has impacted me in a really profound way. Now, that's not to say that, obviously we remember Alan Kurdi, the 3-year-old Syrian refugee who washed up on the shore. We remember those images and they were incredibly powerful. But Ivor, you raise an interesting point. Like, I definitely feel the world looking at this in a different way, and it is something for us all to look at. I did see a social media post, though, that really it was from a BBC Ukrainian editor, and she wrote, I dressed my 10-year-old son. We had some breakfast sitting as far from the windows as we could, but he was so scared he vomited. And
Oh my
even right now,
gosh.
just reading that, I of course, I have an almost 10-year-old son. You know, I have like an 8.5-year-old. And so you just put yourself in that situation. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be putting ourselves in all these situations. But I just can't help but think, and I think it's this kind of, so it's two things. It's with the COVID being the thing that everybody, as a parent, we've all been trying to protect our kids from COVID for the last 2 years and sort of like shielding them in small ways. And so when I think and I empathize about being in that position for this other layer, to me, it strikes me as just so unfair. And also, I think maybe because there is one madman behind this, in many ways, it feels somehow, I don't know how to articulate this, but different. And anyway, I leave
Sid,
that there.
I
There's
mean,
no answer.
Sid, I definitely hear what you're saying, but to jump in here, I mean, the issue with this particular situation is that Putin has so much at his disposal to literally threaten the entire world society. And I think that's what makes the gravity of this particular situation so unique. It's the fact that literally our Western societies, countries that we live in right here, we're literally at threat. Like, we are literally at threat. If he advances and takes over Ukraine, he has Belarus already. Literally, we could see ourselves in a World War III situation. And this is something that we haven't had to grapple with as a Western democracy for quite some time. And at this point, when we're looking and hearing from our political leaders and how they're talking about it, you can actually see they're nervous themselves. And it almost seems like they were unprepared for the situation, or that they were hoping that it wasn't going to get here. And so for me, like, I'm looking at this, and even back to the topic that you were talking about, Jess, about, misinformation circulating out there. I'm happy we have social media as a tool so that we can get the unfiltered information from people who potentially may even live in Russia, who don't agree with how Putin is handling the situation, because we know that there are grave consequences for them if they speak out. At least they have a tool at their disposal if they have the courage to speak out and tell us how they're feeling, because we're not hearing from those people who don't agree with this guy.
And then the bravery of those very people who we can see from these primary sources on social media being arrested in real time. I think the last number I heard was 1,500 Russians who are against Putin and the war being arrested.